It's at about this point in the video where people who are outside of our industry realize that there is a very real problem in the fire service. Name after name after name is going to scroll past you. And we intentionally didn't alphabetize it because we didn't want people to know when the list was going to end. We didn't want them to feel comfortable that they were coming close to Z. Because at this point in time, when we started out on our mission, we didn't know when this was going to end, and we didn't see any solutions in sight. And in my 25 years in the fire department, I've worked with or known a lot of these men and women. But what was scariest to us about this video wasn't the fire or the scrolling of names. It's what's about to happen in a second, is we run out of music. And we ran out of music because after we made the video, we realized we forgot about a whole bunch of our brothers and sisters that left us. And we realized that some people had gone off and died without letting us know that they had cancer. And that's what scared us the most back in 2006 and 2007 when we started on this journey. Today I'm here to talk to you about the genesis of flame retardant legislation and the San Francisco Fire Department story. And our story isn't unique. It's a story that all of us are facing. And what I want to impress upon you is not the science behind it or the research or any of that. It's the power of an idea and the way you tell that story. That's going to drive the science and the research. And that science and research is going to drive the advocacy, and that advocacy is going to end up with results. So we titled this The Genesis of Flame Retardant Legislation, but I choose to call it The Tale of the Accidental Activists. When we started out, we had no knowledge about the hazards of flame retardants. In fact, we couldn't say polybrominated diphenyl ethers. I still have a hard time saying it. But we did know that our brothers and sisters were dying, as the video said, in a hospital or a hospice or at home. And they were dying with their boots off. And our first stab at this was to drop our boots on the steps of City Hall and send a message to the policymakers that they had to walk through our graveyard on their way to work. They had to see just how pervasive this problem was. That men and women were leaving this earth never to come back, and those boots would never be filled. So as I stated, we had no known expertise on these issues. We knew how to advocate for wages and working conditions. But at this point in time, when we knew we had a problem with cancer, we were approached by Tony Stefani. He was a captain of one of our rescue squads, and he was diagnosed with a rare form of transitional cell carcinoma, a kidney and bladder cancer, along with 3 other members of his station. And he came to us and he said he wanted to start a cancer prevention foundation to find out what was happening and to find out ways to prevent it. So we immediately jumped on board and supported Tony 100%. And the first thing we wanted to find out was how pervasive was cancer in the San Francisco Fire Department. We conducted a very rudimentary survey, mailed it to all of our active and retired members, and we asked them if they had cancer or if they knew of coworkers who had cancer. And within the first week, we realized how rudimentary our study was, is that we received a response that said, "My husband died of cancer years ago." Dead men aren't going to return a survey, so it was going to be complete, but we still, being firefighters, marched ahead blindly. And here's our results. 775 retirees responded, and 237 of them had active cancer. 665 active firefighters responded, and 33 of them had active cases of cancer. It was long past time for us to get to work. So we began testing and working in conjunction with the University of California at San Francisco. We did bladder cancer screening of our members. We tested 1,000 active and retired participants, and out of those 1,000 participants, we identified 3 more transitional cell carcinomas. This is a cancer that occurs in 1 in 100,000 people, and we're already up to 7 right now in this story. We had a very big problem. The results were presented at the American Urological Association in 2007. And what we learned from the study was that these toxins were being deposited into our kidneys, causing cellular changes in cancer, but they're also passing through the kidneys and the filters into our bladder, causing cellular changes there. And since 2007, we've identified 6 more cases of transitional cell carcinoma just in the San Francisco firefighters among active and retired. Now, it's at this point that the accidental activists really awaken. And in 2009, the foundation was visited by Dr. Arlene Bloom, a scholar at the UC Berkeley Department of Chemistry. And she expressed to us concerns about the toxicity of flame-retardant chemicals and our elevated rates of cancer. Now again, we didn't know anything about flame-retardant chemicals, what they were composed of and how dangerous they were, but it made us realize that maybe there was something to this. Maybe we were the canary in the coal mine, so to speak, with these chemicals. So we conducted further testing. We identified 12 firefighters who were willing to be tested after working fires, and we tested them for these PBDEs. And we found out that they had PBDE levels 60% higher than the normal population. And while we were presenting these study results, Tony Stefani was presenting them, we were approached by 2 documentary film producers, Kirby Walker and Jamie Redford. And they were doing a documentary on something called TB 117, Technical Bulletin 117. It was a law put into place by Jerry Brown in 1976 to mandate flame-retardant chemicals in furniture and children's products. Pretty boring stuff. But the producers had realized that our efforts at testing firefighters revealed that these flame retardants that were mandated were actually depositing and coursing through the blood of firefighters. And these are carcinogenic chemicals with known links to cancer. And what the documentary showed was the work of the Chicago Tribune, chemical industry, a group of firefighters, mothers, and scientists and activists, all of us trying to remove these deadly toxins. And again, to go back to the beginning, it shows the power of an idea, which drove the science, which drove the advocacy. And it ended with Tony Stefani testifying before the United States Senate. Years later, when Jerry Brown became governor again, he reversed TB 117 and removed these deadly chemicals. But you can see how the San Francisco story is based upon that idea and that storytelling and how you get that message across. Now, these studies, because of our storytelling and advocacy, began to get national notice, and we were contacted by NIOSH in 2010, and we've all heard about the study and the results, and this became sort of the gold standard regarding firefighting and cancer. But we began additional studies, and in 2012, we realized that breast cancer rates in the San Francisco Fire Department were astronomical. If you're a female firefighter in San Francisco under the age of 50, you are 6 times more likely to contract breast cancer than the national average. As a result of this, we helped form the Women's Firefighting Biomonitoring Collaborative. Again, to do the research, to have the idea drive the research, to drive the advocacy, to end up in results. In 2015, we funded another pilot study to evaluate how these key flame-retardant compounds, how they affect human cell models, kidney tissue. What is the effect at the cellular level of these PBDEs? And the aim was to determine the toxicity of these compounds and to identify possible countermeasures to see is there a way we can counteract these toxins in our tissue. And our latest research efforts, we had over 8,000 homes destroyed in 72 hours. And if you see in that picture, they're vaporized. It's foundations and chimneys as far as the eye can see. So all of those chemicals we've been talking about, all of those compounds and deadly products that we've been mentioning all day, they were vaporized and made airborne, and this toxic plume hung over these firefighters for days, for weeks. And if you know anything about wildland firefighting, you're wearing a bandana and running around with a shovel most of the time. You're inhaling all of these carcinogenic chemicals. We secured funding, we got approval, and we began testing 200 of the firefighters who were first up there to see what they were exposed to. So after a decade of efforts, our work continues in new ways. And there's numerous studies and publicity, and as you can see in this picture, those accidental activists that put their boots on the steps of City Hall to send a message, 10 years later, now we're invited into City Hall, and they stand with us in our graveyard. They stand with us with those empty boots because, like I said, it's the power of the idea and the storytelling. And our story in San Francisco is not unique by any stretch of the imagination, because our story is our story in the fire service. That show of hands moments ago about who's been affected by cancer, there wasn't a hand that was in their lap in this room. It's all of us. So it's often been said that science fiction leads science. The power of ideas by artists and writers, producers and directors sometimes leads scientists to the creation that they see in that work of fiction or in that movie. The same applies with us, is that the power of our ideas are what's going to drive the science. And that science is going to drive the advocacy. And that advocacy is going to result in victories, both scientific and legislative. And the storytelling and the imagination that is incumbent upon all of you to demonstrate, to keep telling our story, it doesn't have to be a huge graveyard of boots. You don't have to have the numbers that we have in San Francisco if you're in a smaller fire department. You just need a few stories. And so I'm going to leave you with this last little video that we made. It's just a tale of 4 separate San Francisco firefighters and what they've been through. But I really want to impress upon all of you to keep telling our story, because these ideas are what are going to drive us towards success. Thank you.
I'm Danny Armenta, and I'm named after my dad, who was known as Dan Armenta, in the firehouse, mainly known as Captain Dan Armenta. And I've always believed that names hold a special story, and I think that my dad's is also a pretty heroic story. My dad grew up in San Francisco. He grew up in Bayview, Hunters Point area, and he became a fireman and was a fireman for 31 years. A year after his retirement is when he experienced some of the first symptoms of his cancer. A lot of questions kept coming up as to why this kind of cancer. My dad wasn't a man of many vices. He was a very healthy, active firefighter. And although it happens to many people who are, lead very healthy and active lifestyles, the fact that it's happening to him and other firefighters from the same department, from the same city, is what's scary and questionable.
My name is Neen Nicholson, and I am a captain in the San Francisco Fire Department, the captain of Station 13, and I have 23 years in. About 4.5 years ago, I underwent a double mastectomy, and within a month of that, I started what was the first of 16 rounds of chemotherapy. And that kicked me to the curb, shall we say. I had all the side effects that you hear about with chemotherapy: nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, weight loss, hair loss. I went through menopause and just everything. It was awful. There seemed to be a lot of women in the department getting breast cancer. It wasn't necessarily the number of women, but the age of women. All of us were premenopausal, mostly in our 40s, who were getting breast cancer. There is now a biomonitoring study going on of 80 female firefighters in San Francisco, as well as 80 office workers as the control. And it is the first of its kind study within the United States. And it's hopefully going to give us some more information about why we're getting this cancer and how we can prevent it. If not for all the support I got from everyone, doctors, firefighters, Cancer Prevention Foundation, everyone, I probably would not be here.
I'm Derek Murphy. I'm the brother of John Murphy, who passed 3 years ago from metastasized melanoma. He took all precautions you could, and yet this happens. The great thing about him is that he was really looking at the time and the age and thinking about calling it quits, because, you know, he always knew that if you tempt fate too long, something's going to catch up. Unfortunately, it did. I don't understand it. I don't accept it. But it's a true risk.
My name is Chuck Petrano. I'm a retired firefighter from the city and county of San Francisco. I retired after 30 years. I was a lieutenant at the Engine 37. 10 years after my retirement, I was diagnosed with bladder cancer. Frankly, I was frightened. The diagnosis was such that they were prepared to remove my bladder. Last year, this is in year 9 into bladder cancer, I was diagnosed with colon cancer. I urge all of you to support the San Francisco Firefighters Cancer Prevention Foundation. This is a group of people who care. These people care about us, they care about you, they care about your family members. This is an organization I feel deserves all of our support.
I'd like to say the Cancer Prevention Foundation is about preventing it, but it has also been really instrumental in assisting people when they get cancer.
Our goal is to try to put an end to these awful diseases that are a result of the toxins that you're exposed to. And our hope is that the exposure to these kind of things is recognized by everybody now, and our hope is we have to prevent the impact of a lot of this smoke. With the foundation, with your donations, that we will be able to get myself and others to be able to really come up with potential real solutions to make a firefighter's career safe so that they can go out and do their job to help people in our community.
My dad's story and other firefighters' story relative to this monster of a cancer that seems to keep coming up. The best message we could take away from his story is, what do we do next? What could we do to make sure this doesn't happen to anybody else? And I think the San Francisco Firefighters Cancer Prevention is helping and making a difference, a better difference. And it's up to all of us, family members, friends, associates, to contribute, to take this away from our lives so it doesn't exist.